Lesson 2. The Cake Carriage, a yarn talk, and threading the tension mast. So the next pages, 9 and 10, are how to put it away. Well, we're not going to put it away today, but it's basically the opposite way that we put it together. When we did the setup, it didn't actually show the cast-on comb, but I will show you the cast-on comb when we start actually knitting, because that's when we're going to need it. And now we are going to discuss before we start to knit the K carriage. So I will adjust my camera and we will get on the K carriage. Alright, so now we are going to discuss the K carriage in a little bit better detail. I'm going to take off the sinker plate for this. Alright. I is for intarsia. In order to get intarsia to click in, you have to push in that little button. And now you're in intarsia. We will be going over intarsia knitting on this machine. Don't you worry. It's not just going to be glanced over. Okay? But it will not engage into intarsia unless you push the little button. I am not sure myself if the carriage here has to be on the machine when we do intarsia. So, like I said, this is something that I'm learning too. Release the cam buttons by sliding the cam button. So, if you have those engaged, okay. MC, thread lace. Make sense? Of course it does. If you are removing your carriage, use the CR. Please do not try and knit with the CR button engaged. That is just for carriage removal, hence CR. KC2. The end needles are selected according to the pattern. I find that I use KC2 a lot more than KC1. KC1. The end needles automatically... No. Oh. See, now I said that wrong. KC2, the end needles are selected according to the pattern. KC1, that's the one I use. Look at me go. The end needles are automatically selected on each row regardless of the pattern sequence. So no matter what, the end needles will pop out. If you are doing enchanted edges with Diana Sullivan, do not put your carriage in KC1. You will have a very bad day. So we touched on tuck buttons, 2 buttons left and right. We touched on the MC button, which is for ferrule patterning. We need to do the weaving and tuck brushes when doing the fancy dancy patterns. Intarsia is above the part buttons, so the part buttons have something to do with the intarsia feature as well. The upper and lower, like I said, for thread lace. And if you're regular knitting, then you keep these things in N. N is for normal. That's the way I look at it anyway. We have our tension dial. I'm going to put the handle down here. For most of your knitting life, you will probably use tensions 5, 6, or 7. If you have a very fine yarn, so I guess it's 1 ply or a single strand, 0, 2, 3. It's not easy to find very fine yarn where I am. It is not easy to find fine yarn, which is 3 to 5. Fine yarn to me is a number 2 at Michael's. Medium yarn is a 4 to 6. Believe it or not, that's the same yarn from Michael's. thick yarn. So that would be like 3-ply. So one from the local craft store would be Lion Brand Mandela. And if you're lucky enough to have a knit grandma, she will have Tam Varsity. If you have a very thick yarn, or a thick yarn, so 7 to 10, again, that would be number 3. So I guess we call that sometimes light or baby weight. That is the thickest that you should use in this machine. There are some 4-ply that you can use on your machine, but the reality is you are taking a huge risk of destroying this machine. They do not make these anymore. You can't just go to the store and get a new one, and you can't find anyone to repair them, because the people that used to repair them are no longer with us. So please, treat your machine like it is an antique. It's not the antique of antiques, but it is an antique, and it needs a little bit of respect here. We're now on the cast-on comb. I will go get one. Okay, let's talk cast-on combs. These are all of the ones that I have in my collection. I have one that is supposed to be in with a machine. And what's missing? This end here. It's supposed to connect to these ones. I have no end. Never did. Ever. So I can't actually connect it. So I have all of these, which do not connect to anything because I'd never got the metal ends with them. The owners of my machines managed to lose those special metal ends, so I don't have one. What do I have instead? Well, instead, they ordered these cast-on combs, which have locks on them. If you get one of these with a lock on it, do a happy dance. Because those are the ones that you will use 99.99% of the time. These little locks lock into the gate pegs. Absolutely the best options. So I'm going to put these away again, and we will start our fun time. Next up in the book, it discusses the needle positions. So we have A, which is non-working. B, we are about to work. D, I really need you to work. And E, we use for hold. As you can see, there is no C position. I have no idea why. Maybe it's just so that people wouldn't be confused, or it has to do with the language. So we have A, B, D, E. So, not working. I need you to work. For the love of God, please work and hold that thought. Okay? Makes sense? Put a little bit of humor in there. Next, we need to discuss the row counter. So I will reposition and we'll meet you at the row counter. Row counter. It has arrows as to which way you're supposed to turn this thing. 0, 0, 0. There you go. Zeroed out. If you don't want the carriage to trip the row counter, lift it up, push it down engaged, up, down. Pretty simple. Oh, we get to discuss our lace carriage. Okay. So, on your lace carriage, you have N, normal lace. F, fine lace. Normal, fine. Leave it at normal. See these? Don't play with those. Okay, don't play with those unless you're listening to Diana Sullivan. She'll tell you when to play with those. I keep my lace carriage stored in the lid. That way I can reach it when I need it. Next we're going to talk about claw weights. Before we can talk about claw weights, we have to talk about an elephant in the room. And that elephant in the room is this right here. This yellow strip that is on my machine. If you have one in your machine, don't remove it. Unless you're doing lace. If you're doing lace, you can't have that in. This is a fine knit bar. And that helps your stitches knit off. Consider it your little helper. The things are awesome. Some people never use them. I do. Now back to the claw weights. So, claw weight A, claw weight B. And now we need a cast on comb. So we have our cast on comb on our machine. We have some knitting on our machine. How do we use the claw weights? Well, you don't just hang them on the fabric. You hang them on the cast on comb. Okay? Make sense? Don't worry, I will show it to you as we get knitting. The next subject is yarn. You have coned yarn, and then you have skeined yarn, or balled up yarn. If you are fortunate enough to use wool-like from Loops and Threads, which is Michael's craft store, don't wind it. It is a center pull. You take off the label. Hang on. Find your center pull and then you squish it. And there you go. That's your cake. If you try and wind wool-like, you will get static. Static means you're not happy. Trust me, you won't be happy. Another misconception. The multi-thread yarns here. The book says to wind yourself a cake and to take from the inside. Just like wool-like, don't do that with these yarns. Leave them on the cone. So like this. Leave it on the cone. And then use it as an outside. You will get way less static buildup. You can still wax it. When you wax it, the fibers will all be in the right direction. When cones are round, they are waxed as they're wound. So there is less static buildup, and it'll run through your machine smoothly. So that is my biggest piece of advice for you guys. Don't treat all yarns equally. Ask around. You do not want to have multi-threads mistension. Because when they mistension, then you get random loops and pulls. You don't want that. We are now at pages 15 and 16 where we are going to thread the tension mast. And then we will how to cast on with a finished edge. So we will do the cast on. I'll get a nice higher contrast yarn than these two so that you can actually see what I'm doing. So this should give you an idea as to how much room a knitting machine actually needs. That tension mast leans back over a foot. So your antennas or tension springs actually need to go back quite a ways. If they do not go all the way back, you will not maintain the tension you require. So having your machine against a wall will actually cause a lot of headache for you going forward, because those tension springs need to spring. That is what they are designed for. Is there a way to combat that? Kind of, sort of. But unless you have a motor mount frame like I do, where I have the ability to move it up, you're not going to have a really good day. So I've tightened mine. And tight. So mine is now moved up. However, if I put my sheets down, it would still interfere with the ability of these to go all the way back where they need to go in order to keep proper tension. I'm going to thread this, and then I will move my curtains back into where they need to go. But let's just move forward, and let's actually thread this thing. Can you see this yellow thread? I mean, pink thread? I think you can. So we're coming up from the floor. It is best if you have your yarn on the floor, because then you have further for it to travel, and you can see knots if there's knots. We are then going behind the tension, moving the little disc, putting it behind the little pin, on beside this pin. Hang on, I'm going to move my camera. Okay, so we are behind this little disc. There is a little tiny pin. I think you can kind of see it by my finger. So it goes into the disc, behind the pin, around this pin. Okay, if you have yarn wax, throw it on top, and then we go to the front. Now at the front, we are simply putting it around the loop, so it goes into the loop, but you don't have to suffer. Like, you don't have to sit there and actually thread it. There's a gap there. And then we will grab the spring. Okay. Same maneuver around, and it's in. And then we lock in the thread. I'm going to show you again on the other side. This time with my green thread. We're coming in, around, clicking, okay, through here, here, let it go, and here. Now you're going to ask, what is this for? According to my knit enabler, aka Grandma, we go like that. So this is an extra bit of tension, similar to what this yarn wax gives on the other side, so that you don't have that extreme looping when doing Fair Isle, two-color work, that sort of thing. It's kind of cool. And that is how we thread the machine itself. You can see on page 15 how that is all in illustration for you. Up next, casting on, 2 different ways.